came back from Russia. They went to Denver, and from Denver they went to New York.
You mean Prabhupada, right?
Yeah.
He went to Detroit also. Just a second, I'm sharing with him. Logan. He's a nice boy. He wants to practice. Logan will come, AJ Logan will come tomorrow. Please spend some time with him.
Sounds good, I'll be there.
Okay, so he's a nice boy. Yes. So you remember we ended with Devi Shakti Mataji. Devi Shakti, she got second initiation and she was sharing her issues with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave the solution and she felt very satisfied, right? Nice. Okay, hope everyone is doing well. Can everyone doing well? Can everyone say Haribol? Big Haribol? Loud? Huh? What is that? Second Prabhu?
Haribol.
All battery down Haribol, these all are. 1, 2, 3, ready, set, go. Haribol! I don't know if you all say or not, but my wife says I could hear only your voice. Okay, that's me. Let's be always enthusiastic. So in New York, can you check with AJ? Just a second, I'll ask him if he's okay, all set. Actually, you can read second Prabhu.
In New York, Prabhupada lectured gravely and authoritatively from Srimad Bhagavatam, stressing surrender to Krishna through surrendering to the Krishna consciousness movement. Unlike any other Bhagavatam lecturer, Prabhupada was able to offer a movement, a society, and a way of life that were fully Krishna conscious, and that gave any interested person practical entrance into the devotional service of the Lord. Someone asked how a person who had been very sinful could be relieved of his karma, and Prabhupada replied simply, "Come and live with us, that is all. Is it very difficult? Our students, they are living with us. You simply come and live with us, and you are free from all karma. Is it difficult? Then do that. We shall give you food. We shall give you shelter. We shall give you a nice philosophy. If you want to marry, we shall give you a good wife. What do you want more? So come and live with us, that's all." Prabhupada stressed the same point in his lectures. If a person seeking spiritual fulfillment lived and served with ISKCON devotees, even material fulfillment would come. These Krishna conscious boys and girls in 60 centers, they are living in the best houses. They are eating the best food. They are in the best consciousness. They have got the best hope, everything best. Their feature of body is best. What material happiness do you want more than this? They have got wife, children, happiness, home, everything full. So material happiness is nothing to a Krishna conscious person. Material happiness will roll at his feet, saying, "Please take me, please take me." There is no need of asking for it. Simply be steady and ask Krishna, "Please engage me in your service." Then your satisfaction will automatically come. Don't bother for material happiness. So here, Prabhupada is lecturing in New York, where he's speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, stressing the importance of surrender to Krishna and basically surrendering to the Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada basically by following Krishna consciousness, they would gain practical entrance into the devotional service of the Lord. And when somebody asked Prabhupada, like, how could a sinful person be relieved of his karma? Prabhupada says it is very simple. Just come live with us, associate with their devotees, with students. Like you'll get, if you move to a temple, you'll get food, you'll get shelter, nice philosophy, and if you want to marry, you'll also get a good wife. What do you want more? Come live with us, is what Prabhupada was replied. And Prabhupada also mentioned that if a person is seeking spiritual fulfillment and lived with his devotees, then even material fulfillment would come. And he says that the boys and girls in the 60 centers, they have the best of material things too, like living in best houses. They have good consciousness. They have wife, children, happiness, and home. And he says, like, what other material things do you want more than this? And also, the material happiness will roll at their feet and say, please take me, please take me. If you just be steady and practice Krishna consciousness, then your satisfaction will come. And he says, don't bother for material happiness.
Very nice, thank you. This Krishna conscious boys and girls in 60 centers, they're living in the best house. You already finished this, right?
It is from Nandakishwar asked.
Yeah. Nandakishwar asked, what happens to a person out on the street if we just give him one simply wonderful or some prasadam? And what is that? Is a sweet made from powdered milk, butter, and sugar, and offered to Lord Krishna. I hope everyone got the recipe, right? Simply wonderful. AJ shared. Prabhupada, then it is wonderful. Simply wonderful. The devotee laughed. Devotees laughed. He has not tasted such wonderful sweet in his life. Therefore, you give him wonderful, and because he is eating that wonderful sweet, one day he will come to your temple and become wonderful. Therefore, it is simply wonderful. So go on distributing the simply wonderful. Your philosophy is simply wonderful. Your prasadam is simply wonderful. You are simply wonderful. And your Krishna is simply wonderful. The whole process is simply wonderful. Krishna acts wonderfully, and it is acting wonderfully. Who can deny it? There's a video play called Wonderful Krishna. Anyway, Kirtanananda Maharaj. Prabhupada is simply wonderful. While Prabhupada continued in New York, poised to leave for London in a few days, his secretary mentioned that many US centers are still vying for his presence. Prabhupada casually remarked that if any center could arrange a good lecture program and pay travel expense plus $1,000, then he would go there before leaving for London. Hearing this, the devotees in Gainesville, Florida, determined to meet Prabhupada's transcendental challenge. The temple president Hridayananda assigned an uninitiated devotee, David Lieberman, to find a sponsor at the University of Florida willing to pay $1,000 for Prabhupada to come and speak. David visited every student organization on campus until he found a donor. Prabhupada agreed to come, even though his secretary informed him that the flight would lay over 2 hours in Atlanta and then continue to Jacksonville, a 1.5 hour car ride from Gainesville. That's a spiritual challenge, how Prabhupada made it. So now a question is asked, Nandakeshwar is asking, what happens, we are just giving out sweets. It's called, simply wonderful. What happens? The person gets a, simply wonderful laddu. So Prabhupada says, well, it is wonderful. They will like it. Their consciousness will change. Their taste for Krishna consciousness will increase. And they will come to Krishna. Their life is going to be simply wonderful. And everything is very nice. Why should, so it begins everything from there. Prasadam, association. So then Kirtanananda Swami Maharaj says, just adding, Prabhupada is simply wonderful. Everything is wonderful. So now Prabhupada is preparing to go to London. Devotee secretary says that the US center is still looking for his presence, vying for his presence. Prabhupada said, maybe in a casual joke, he just said, if anyone arranges $1,000 like he was just casually said, it's not it's his own centers. His own center, and He said, anyone can arrange a good program for me, then, my travel expenses and $1,000, I will come. So Florida Gainesville devotees, they took the challenge. Now, David Lieberman, he arranged a talk for Prabhupada and the ticket, and Prabhupada agreed to go. Yes. AJ?
Atlanta, July 29th, 1971. The 10 residents of the recently opened Atlanta temple arranged to receive Prabhupada during his layover at the Atlanta airport. They prepared a large feast and decorated the Eastern Airlines VIP lounge with fruits, flowers, and garlands. Bill Ogle. Although Srila Prabhupada was not big physically, he immediately captured the consciousness of the entire Atlanta airport when he entered. Everyone was watching as he walked with his head held high, his cane moving gracefully with every step. The airport is one of the busiest in the country, but everyone who saw Prabhupada looked at him in amazement. Airport officials voluntarily began clearing a path for Prabhupada to walk. But what was even more amazing was that he was so submissive to such insignificant disciples as we. Prabhupada entered the VIP lounge with his disciples and about 20 Indian guests. Confronting the portable Vyasana atop a marble table, Prabhupada declined. The seat seemed unsteady, but the devotees assured him that it was sturdy. So Prabhupada climbed up, sat down, and began leading a kirtan. After speaking for about 15 minutes, Prabhupada concluded his lecture. This is not sentimental chanting, but it is based on the soundest philosophy, Vedic literatures. We have got so many books, and you can buy them in our bookstore. Where's the bookstore? There was a long pause. The devotees had remembered fruits, flowers, the chair, the feast, and invitations to the Indians, but they had forgotten Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada continued to wait for an answer until finally the senior disciple, Janamajaya, replied, Prabhupada, we usually have a bookstore. Was all Prabhupada said. Again, a long silence. So Prabhupada said, looking to the audience, any questions? Prabhupada chatted with the Indians, asking their names and where they were from in India. Most of them were young men with families and treated him respectfully, like a grandfather or a revered Swami. One Indian man, about 35, mentioned he was getting his PhD in biology. Oh, biology, Prabhupada said. Poor frogs. Everyone in the lounge except the biologist burst into laughter. No, the biologist protested, embarrassed. Why poor frogs? Because you are killing, Prabhupada said. But it is for the advancement of knowledge, said the biologist, so it is worthwhile. It is for the advancement of knowledge. All right, said Prabhupada. If I ask you now, will you give your body for the advancement of knowledge? Everyone in the room began to laugh. Yes, I would, the man replied. But the more he protested, repeating, yes, I would, the more ridiculous he seemed, and the harder everyone laughed. How many species of life are there? Prabhupada asked. 50 million, the biologist replied. Oh, said Prabhupada, have you seen them all? No. How many have you seen? Perhaps 5,000. And you are wrong. And you are wrong, Prabhupada said. There are 8.4 million species of life. We have scientific knowledge from the Vedas. So Prabhupada arrives at the Atlanta airport, and the disciples, the 10 disciples, or the 10 devotees at the new Atlanta temple, commandeered the airline VIP lounge to set up a little feast, well, a large feast for him, it sounds like. And they decorated everything, and they brought an altar and a seat for Prabhupada. And, one of the devotees tells about how, when he showed up at the airport, everybody paid attention to him. And he was so graceful, and he walks along, and he walks real tall. And, the airport officials, unprompted, just started clearing a pathway for him, and so he could get through. And once they got into the lounge, Prabhupada was afraid to sit in the Vyasana because it looked unsturdy. He said it looked like it was going to fall down if he sat in there. But the devotees convinced him that it was fine, so he climbed up there and took a seat and began leading kirtan. And then he started doing a little lecture for 15 minutes about about chanting the holy names. And he says, hey, this isn't just for kicks. It's based on on the most sound of philosophy out there, the Vedic literatures. And then he says, and you can learn more by buying our books. And then the devotees realized they forgot to bring books. And Prabhupada just kind of, he seems a little stunned by that, I guess. He doesn't know what to say. So he just goes, oh, okay, thanks. So then, he's talking to the other crowd there. He's talking to the rest of the people there, and about 20 Indian guests, local Indians from Atlanta. It sounds like were invited as well. And he's talking to a biologist, and Prabhupada says, oh, I feel bad for the frogs because you're killing these frogs all the time as a biologist. And the guy says, well, it's for a good cause. We do it so we can learn more. So Prabhupada says, okay, well, fine. Why don't we kill you so we can learn more? And the guy's like, sure, do it. Bring it on. And apparently everybody got a kick out of that. And, he just kept saying, he's like, kill me, right? Like, I would give up my life so you guys can learn more. And everybody got to, laughed even more. And then Prabhupada challenges him. He says, how many species are out there? And the guy says, 50 million. And he says, have you seen them all? And he said, no, I've seen 5,000. Prabhupada says, well, you're wrong. There's 8.4 million species. And we know that because it's in the Vedas. And so Prabhupada's sitting there telling this biologist, you don't know what you're talking about. You're doing terrible things. And so saying, go back to the real scientific knowledge that you can find in the Vedas. We don't need you killing frogs so you can find out more stuff.
And look at his interesting answer. He has seen 5,000.
Yeah, I've seen about 5,000.
How would you have seen 5,000?
Who's keeping count?
Yeah. Miss Nipa.
Can you hear me, Prabhu? There's some music going on across the street. If there's disturbance, I can stop.
There's meeting going on?
Like if you hear any disturbance, there's across where I stay, across the street, they are playing loud music. So can you hear me?
Okay. Now we are not hearing anything. You can say it.
Okay. Bill Ogle. After Prabhupada took Prasada, we performed a play for him. The play was The Brahmana and the Cobbler. I played Vishnu. It was terrible. I had to be Vishnu and my wife had to be Lakshmi. I was lying down as Lord Vishnu and my wife was massaging my feet. Prabhupada kept looking at me and I thought he must be thinking, who is this rascal playing Vishnu? My feeling was this is not very good. I shouldn't be doing this. I was very embarrassed to be in front of Prabhupada like that. Jayasena was Narada Muni and he offered obeisances about 100 times throughout the play. Because Prabhupada was there, Jayasena was constantly offering obeisances to everyone and anything. So although he was playing Narada Muni, he offered obeisances to the cobbler. But some of the Indians spoke up. They were a little taken aback that Narada Muni, such a great saint, was offering obeisances to the cobbler, who was ordinarily a very low class person. At this point, Prabhupada interrupted and began to explain. Actually, he said, it is all right that Narada Muni has offered obeisances to the cobbler because the cobbler is Vaishnava. Any Vaishnava can receive obeisances more than a Brahmana. He continued narrating the play. He told the story and we continued acting. It was ecstatic. As Prabhupada was leaving the lounge to board his flight to Jacksonville, a lady in wheelchair, the mother of one of the devotees in Atlanta, raised herself up and threw herself at Prabhupada's feet. With tears in her eyes, she cried out, I'm dying of cancer. Save me, save me. Srila Prabhupada bent down and put his hand on her head. That is all right, he said comfortingly. That is all right. As Prabhupada, garlanded with red roses and magnolias, walked down the corridor toward his plane, the devotees thought Prabhupada appeared majestic like a king. He emanated a gold effulgence and he seemed powerful yet humble. The devotees felt spiritual strength and pledged to follow Prabhupada's teachings. They last glimpsed him walking across the airfield toward the small plane that would take him to Jacksonville. His saffron silk dhoti and kurta blowing in the breeze, he turned to them and waved. So Bill Ogle, he said, after Prabhupada took the prasada, they performed a play. The play was called The Brahmana and the Cobbler. And Bill Auger played the Vishnu, and it was terrible according to him. He said he is supposed to be the Vishnu, and the wife had to be Lakshmi. He was lying down as Lord Vishnu, and wife was massaging his feet. Prabhupada kept looking at him, and he thought he might be thinking, who is this rascal playing the Vishnu? And his feeling was not very good, and he was embarrassed. Jayasena was a Narada Muni, and he offered obeisances 100 times throughout the play. And he was constantly offering obeisances to everyone and anything, in even the cobbler. But some of the Indians spoke up. They were like little taken aback, saying that Narada is like a low class person, so how come you're offering obeisances to the cobbler? At this point, Prabhupada interrupted and started to explain the
Oh,
Narada.
you meant to say Narada was not a low class man. Narada was a big saint, great saint.
Yes, yes, yeah. Although he was playing Narada Muni, he offered obeisances to the cobbler. Sorry, yeah. And at this point, Prabhupada interrupted and said, actually, it's all right that Narada Muni has offered obeisances to the cobbler because even a cobbler is a Vaishnava. Any Vaishnava can receive obeisances more than a Brahmana. He continued narrating the play. He told the story and continued acting. It was ecstatic. As Prabhupada was about to leave the lounge to board the flight for Jacksonville, a lady was there in the wheelchair, and she was the mother of one of the devotees in Atlanta. She raised herself and threw at Prabhupada's feet, crying that she's dying out of cancer and save me, save me. And Prabhupada bent down and said, "It's okay, that's all right, that's all right." He started saying this comfortingly. As Prabhupada was garlanded with red roses and magnolias, he started walking towards the plain, and the devotees thought that Prabhupada appeared like a king, and he emanated a gold effulgence, which was powerful and yet humble. The devotees felt spiritual strength and to follow Prabhupada's teachings, and they last glimpsed him walking across the airfield to the plane that would take him to Jacksonville, and his saffron silk dhoti was like blowing in the breeze, and he just turned them and waved.
Very nice. Okay, Prasanthi, please.
Gainesville, July 29, 1971. Srila Prabhupada asked how fast the car was going and how long it would take them to get to Gainesville. 65 miles per hour, the driver said. It would take an hour and a half. Prabhupada observed the scenery along the highway, pine forests, marshes, exotic birds, and occasional uh, armadillo foraging near the highway. Lotuses and lilies grew wild in the canals along the roadside, and bright sunshine warmed the clear air. Gainesville was a side trip for Prabhupada, a special day for preaching. He had left Shyam Sundara, his secretary in New York, and brought with him only Aravinda, his servant. He had come for a day to bring the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to yet another city. When the devotees had picked him up at the airport, he had appeared grave, but on catching sight of the devotees, he had smiled wonderfully. And then, turning to Hrudayananda, he had asked, which way? He was like a transcendental fighter asking to be pointed toward the battle. Prabhupada walked along a flower-sprinkled pathway and into the temple, a rented house near the University of Florida campus. In the temple room, he stood a moment, studying a crude but sincerely executed painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Hrudayananda asked Prabhupada if he would like to rest, and he nodded. While the devotees performed Kirtana, Prabhupada retired to his room, returning later to sit on the large blue velvet Vyasasana in the small temple room. In addition to Prabhupada's disciples from Gainesville, Miami, Tallahassee, and New Orleans, many university students and other guests were also present. It is so nice to see so many young boys and girls here, Srila Prabhupada began. In this remote corner of the world, so far away from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada came to Gainesville on July 29, 1971, and he had to take a car it's an hour and a half drive. He was going through exotic, he was going through the sceneries, and he saw some forests, exotic birds, and highways, and there were like different lotuses and lilies growing in the canals. So finally reached Gainesville. This is a side trip for Prabhupada. He left Shyamchandra in New York and just came with Aravinda, his servant. And he saw he came there to preach the mercy of Lord Chaitanya to another city. He was welcomed with by Hrudayananda, and he entered a rented house near the University of Florida campus, and he rested for a while the devotees started the kirtana. Um, Many people from Gainesville, Miami, Tallahassee, and New Orleans, and also university students and other guests assembled over there. And Prabhupada started his lecture. He was saying, it is very nice to see many young boys and girls in this corner of the world. That's all, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you.
It is so nice to Prabhupada lectured about the saving grace of chanting the holy name of the Lord. One of his disciples, he said, had been present when his mother was dying because he had been telling her about Krishna and Hare Krishna. She said to her son in her last words, "Where is your Krishna? Is he here now?" And then she died. For her, uttering the holy name and thinking of Krishna, Prabhupada said she would go to the spiritual world. After Prabhupada finished his talk, a girl reporter from the university newspaper raised her hand. "I see almost all young people here," she said. "Why is that?" Prabhupada replied with a question. "Why are there so many young people in the university?" The girl reflected a moment. "Well, I guess that's the age for education." "Yes," Prabhupada said. "So this is the age for Krishna consciousness. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks." The engagement for which Prabhupada had come and for which the University of Florida was paying $1,000 was to be that afternoon on campus at the Plaza of the Americas. When Prabhupada arrived, several hundred students were gathered near the temporary stage, sitting casually on the grass, lounging beneath the fragrant magnolia trees. The sky was overcast and rain threatened. As more students gathered, the crowd grew to 500. Then, just as Prabhupada was about to speak, a light drizzle began to fall, and Hridayananda came out on stage to hold an umbrella over Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, sitting on his Vyasasana, said softly into the microphone, "Someone is smoking," and the students politely extinguished their cigarettes. No sooner did Prabhupada begin his lecture, however, than a dog started yapping. Prabhupada paused. "Who is that dog?" he asked. When the dog persisted, Srila Prabhupada said he also wants to talk. Finally, the barking stopped, and so did the rain. But Hridayananda continued to hold the umbrella over Prabhupada's head.
Okay. Prabhupada lectured about the saving grace of chanting the holy name of the Lord. So this is a nice incident. This is, I think it's a lesson. If you all remember, what is the most successful, best example of living the body is when you remember Krishna. That's the successful. Ante Narayana Smriti. Even though boys, how much? Not much for the time, right? And her mother was dying, and last moment she asked, "Where is your Krishna? Is he here now?" So simply remembering that faith, Prabhupada said she will go back to the spiritual world. Such a beautiful science, right? It's not very easy. I think that's why we should all preach. to our friends and relatives, whatever way we can. So a girl reporter asked from the university newspaper, why there's so many young people? So Prabhupada said, why in your university there's so many young people? She said, yeah, because age for education. Prabhupada said, that's right. That's the perfect age for Krishna consciousness. You cannot teach old dog new tricks. So young age is the best time to learn Krishna consciousness movement. That's why they are there. Prabhupada had come, for the program for the University of Florida. They're expecting that's going to be an afternoon at the campus, and few hundred were there. Then as the program began, another few hundred, almost 500 were there, and started drizzling. Hridayanand Prabhu, that time Prabhu is Swami. He brought the umbrella to put over Prabhupada. So he's sitting on the Vyasasana and asked people to not smoke and all this thing. So rain has stopped and Prabhupada is going to speak now. Or actually, Prabhupada already spoke probably, yes. Vijayanand Prabhu?
While riding in the car back to the temple, Prabhupada asked to hear the tape recording of his lecture. When he heard the dog barking at the beginning of his talk, he laughed. Prabhupada, Hridayananda said, Hridayananda, your lecture was wonderful. Everyone liked it. The students liked it. The devotees liked it. The professors liked it. All right, Prabhupada said, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's day of preaching was not over yet. Next was an evening television interview. The interviewer had done some preparatory reading and he introduced Srila Prabhupada by first describing who Krishna was according to Vedic literature and how Srila Prabhupada was in the disciplic succession from Lord Chaitanya. The interviewer asked Prabhupada for an introductory statement. Prabhupada explained, the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to invoke in all people the original consciousness that we are a part and parcel of Krishna. When the interviewer asked Prabhupada, who is your spiritual master? Prabhupada lowered his head humbly and stated the full name of his Guru Maharaja, Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivarjakacharya Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. The interviewer, however, seemed bent on controversy. In what way, sir, may I ask, did you think and do you think right now that the teaching of love of God that you are preaching is different and perhaps better than the teachings of love of God that were being conducted in this country and have been conducted in the rest of the world for centuries? Srila Prabhupada, this teaching is the most authorized, that is a fact. We are following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. He is accepted by us, according to the authority of Vedic religion, to be personally Krishna himself. For example, you are the expert in this establishment. If someone is doing something under your guidance, if you personally teach him, do like this, that is very authorized. So when Lord Chaitanya taught God consciousness, God himself was teaching. Prabhupada answered positively, avoiding the sectarian dispute the interviewer had invited. Yet repeatedly, the interviewer tried to involve him in a controversy. He seemed to want Prabhupada to appear arrogant, sectarian, and anti-American. Prabhupada, however, insisted he was not opposed to any other religion and that anyone in the world could chant the name of the God as it appeared in his religion. So Prabhupada, after finishing the lecture at the university, so he was traveling the car, and on the way he heard the recording of his lecture, and when he heard the barking sound of the God, he was like smiling, and then he also got the feedback from Hridayananda that like everyone liked his preaching, his preaching, and Prabhupada, his schedule was like he had a very busy schedule, so he had an evening TV interview, and the interviewer had already done some some preparation regarding his reading, and also he introduced Prabhupada by describing who is Krishna and regarding according to the Vedic literature. And also he explained to the people like how Prabhupada was in the disciplic succession from Lord Chaitanya. And so the interviewer asked Prabhupada for an introduction, and then Prabhupada explained that Krishna consciousness movement is trying to invoke the original consciousness that everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. And the interviewer asked who was Prabhupada's spiritual master, and Prabhupada lowered his head humbly and mentioned his full name of Guru Maharaja, like Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajakaracharya Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja Prabhupada. Then and the interviewer was very interested to have some controversial talk. So he asked Prabhupada in what way that the teaching of love of God is different from the other teachings which is already available in the country and which is already conducted in the rest of the world for several centuries. And Prabhupada mentioned that this teaching is most authorized, and because these teachings are based on Lord Chaitanya, and according to the Vedic religion, Lord Chaitanya himself is Krishna. And he also gave an example, and he mentioned that if someone is doing someone is working under his guidance, and if they personally teach him and instructions to how to perform anything, then that is very authorized. The same thing is similar to the Krishna consciousness. Here, Lord Chaitanya, who is the God, Krishna himself, come to this world, and he teach them, teach the people how to pray, and it came as a disciplic succession as well. So Prabhupada avoided a lot of conflicts, but still the interviewer repeatedly tried him to involve in controversy. But he tried to make Prabhupada an arrogant sectarian and anti-American. But however, Prabhupada clearly mentioned that he was not opposed to any other religion or not anyone in the world, and anyone can chant the name of the God as it is there in the religion.
Thank you. Interviewer. Probably I didn't read. Did I read my lines? Okay, anyway. Interviewer, but there must have been an element of dissatisfaction on your part with the way Godhead was being professed in this part of the world before you came. Otherwise, there would have been no sense in your being here. Srila Prabhupada, it's not just this part of the world, practically every part of the world has very little interest in God. They're more interested in dog. Prabhupada's answer was strong and philosophically strong. The interviewer, trying his professional best, again attempted to find some fault. Interviewer, it seems to me, sir, as interpreted in your writings, that there is a very high emphasis placed on the relationship between the individual and God. Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is found everywhere. Interviewer, yes, but you place more emphasis on that relationship than on the relationship between one individual and another. Am I right in that? Srila Prabhupada, we have to establish first of all our lost relationship with God. Then we can understand what is our relationship between one individual and another. If the central point is missing, then there's practically no relation. You are an American and another is an American, and both you feel American nationally because the center is America. So unless you understand God, you cannot understand who am I, nor can I understand who you are. Interviewer, I think that in this part of the world, in the Western world, we place a great deal of emphasis on religion in the ways it gets one man to deal with another man, the ethic of religion. Now in the Krishna conscious movement, Srila Prabhupada, we are not concerned how one man deals with another man. Interview, isn't that part of your Krishna conscious movement? Srila Prabhupada, no. This is not important because we know as soon as one knows how to deal with God, he will automatically deal very nicely with others. Interviewer, but let's take the Christian religion for an example. You know the 10 commandments. There's a heavy emphasis in the 10 commandments on the relationship between the human beings and another. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, that sort of thing. Prabhupada, but I say that Jesus Christ never said and never meant that thou shalt not kill. Refers to only human beings. Where is that evidence? Jesus Christ never said that thou shalt not kill refers only to human being. thou shalt not kill any animal. So here, the interview is going on. Sorry, some background noise. He was trying to, find faults in Prabhupada and make it more controversial questions he was trying to put. Prabhupada was avoiding, positively avoiding the sectarian dispute. So he said that in your book you repeatedly state the insist, what is that? The relationship of okay, so your first question is asked is, you must have been very much dissatisfied, right? You must have been an element of dissatisfaction on your part with the way God was being professed in this part of the world. Otherwise, why you have come? Prabhupada says it's not just this, it's all over the world. Everybody's interested in dog, not God anymore. So that's the way he answered. So the interviewer again tried to emphasize his books, that you focus more on relationship between the individual and the Supreme Lord, God. Prabhupada says, yes, that is found everywhere. But in our culture, we find in a relationship, basically, it's very important that one's relationship with other individuals are very important. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, he gave the example, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not do all this stuff. Prabhupada said that doesn't matter much because he said that as soon as you know your relationship with Krishna, automatically your relationship with others will improve. Because without knowing a land America, Americans cannot have a brotherlyhood example. So you have to know the American, automatically natural attachment comes. So similarly, if you know God, if you know Krishna, automatically your relationships will increase, improve. So then Prabhupada says that thou shalt not kill, it does not refer only to the human, refer to the human being. It refers to the animals also. Jesus Christ said, and how you're preaching. Prabhupada said that we are preaching. Same principle, and we are preaching to our people, have that kind of relationship to understand properly how Jesus Christ has mentioned. And let's continue what he says. Actually, whoever is going to read, they can read from his. Second, Prabhu, please read.
Srila Prabhupada. But I say that Jesus Christ said and never said and never meant that thou shalt not kill refers to only human beings. Where is that evidence? Jesus Christ never said that thou shalt not kill refers only to human beings. Thou shalt not kill any animal. Interviewer, any life? Srila Prabhupada, any life, that is religion. Interviewer, it has never been interpreted that way. Srila Prabhupada, you have interpreted differently, but he said, thou shalt not kill. He never said, thou shalt not kill amongst human beings. Why do you interpret it that way? Prabhupada had given the TV interviewer the very thing he was after, controversy. But it was because it was not a desirable controversy, the interviewer promptly dropped it. Instead, he asked Prabhupada how one could recognize a true follower of Krishna consciousness by his behavior. He would be a perfect gentleman, Prabhupada said, that is all. Therefore, I prohibit my disciples to eat meat. Interviewer, to eat meat. Srila Prabhupada, yes. And therefore, I prohibit illicit sex life. Therefore, I prohibit intoxication. They do not even smoke. What to speak of other intoxication? When Prabhupada said that whoever observed these 4 rules would become a perfect gentleman, the interviewer asked whether there was a place for women in the religion. Prabhupada replied that women and men had the same rights and followed the same principles. The interviewer asked whether Prabhupada was encouraged or discouraged, and Prabhupada said he was encouraged because so many devotees were joining. The interviewer doubted that many were joining since out of 200 million Americans, only 24 devotees were present in the TV studio. When you sell diamonds, Prabhupada replied, you cannot expect that everyone will purchase. As a final question, the interviewer asked if Prabhupada had many major complaints about American society. Srila Prabhupada, I have no complaint. These boys and girls are very nice. I am rather encouraged that these boys and girls are hankering after something nice. They are frustrated. So now, since they have the best thing, they are coming. The interviewer asked Srila Prabhupada and his followers to chant Hare Krishna. And within half a minute, they were off the air. The hot studio lights went out, and the engineers started talking among themselves. The interviewer bid Srila Prabhupada a polite farewell. He had no intention of continuing their talk, but Srila Prabhupada continued preaching. On camera or off camera made no difference to him. He saw the interviewer not merely as a television personality, but as someone to receive Krishna's mercy. So here they're talking about one of the 10 commandments where Srila Prabhupada says that Jesus Christ never said that thou shalt not kill refers only to human beings. It refers to everyone. So it is should not even kill animal. And the interviewer says that it is not interpreted that way. Prabhupada says that you interpret it differently, but it never said that thou shalt not kill only amongst human beings. And even though this was like a controversy because this was against it was not what the TV interviewer wanted, he dropped and he moved on to the next question. And he asked, how could one recognize a true follower? And Prabhupada says he would be a gentleman. And therefore he prohibits all of his disciples to eat meat, to prohibit illicit sex life, prohibit intoxication, and says that they don't even smoke. And he also asks, the interviewer asks Prabhupada if there is a place for women in the religion. And Prabhupada says that both of them have the same rights and they should follow the same principles. And he also asked whether Prabhupada was encouraged or discouraged. Prabhupada says he's encouraged because so many devotees are joining. And for that, the interviewer basically doubts that I only see 24. But Prabhupada responds back saying that when you're selling diamonds, you won't expect everyone will come and purchase. It's only a few. So it's the same thing for Krishna consciousness movement. And the final question that the interviewer asks is if he has any major complaints about the American society. Prabhupada says he has no complaints because he has got good support from the boys and girls, and they were frustrated before, but now because they have the best thing, they are happy and they are joining. And they chanted. He asked the Prabhupada and his followers to chant Hare Krishna, and within half minute they were off the air. But Prabhupada still continued preaching to the interviewer, even though the interviewer basically he bid Srila Prabhupada farewell. Prabhupada saw him as someone to receive Krishna's mercy.
AJ?
The two had been sitting very closely for the interview, and Prabhupada now leaned toward the interviewer and said, let me ask you one question. If you have some disease and you want to cure disease, if you have one disease, sorry, I'm going to try again. If you have some disease and you want to cure this disease, what is the best way to go about it? By asking a friend or by going to a medical doctor and asking how to cure this disease? Would you go to a friend? The man replied, yes. Prabhupada shook his head. You would go to a friend. Again, the man said yes. The interviewer was not concentrating, so Prabhupada patiently repeated his example. Try to understand, he said. If you have some disease, then would you go to a medical doctor or would you go to a friend? The man could not grasp the point, so Prabhupada answered, no, you would not go to a friend. You'd go to a physician, one who knows the answer. That is the spiritual master. They talked a while longer, and finally Prabhupada and the devotees left. It was almost midnight, and Prabhupada went to his room. When he had first arrived in Gainesville, he had agreed to initiate the 5 eligible candidates and had even taken their japa beads. But now the day had passed, there had been no initiation, and Prabhupada still had 5 strands of beads. Joseph and Sam, who had come all the way from New Orleans, and David Lieberman and his wife Adrian, and a Gainesville boy named Gary were all in anxiety. They had stayed up talking amongst themselves, wondering whether Srila Prabhupada would hold an initiation ceremony in the morning before he left. Arvind told them that there would be no time for a ceremony in the morning, but that he would ask Srila Prabhupada when they could have their beads back. He went to Prabhupada's room, leaving the devotees to sit and talk about Srila Prabhupada. When Arvind returned, he surprised everyone by announcing, Prabhupada is going to give you your beads now. He is going to give you your initiation in his room. The devotees excitedly hurried to Srila Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada sat on his bed. He wore no shirt, only his dhoti, which had been pushed up high on his thighs and tucked under himself like a loincloth or gamcha. His body was smooth and glowing. The devotees sat on the floor around his bed while he held their beads in his hand and chanted. Prabhupada handed Gary his beads. So your name is now Dharmadasa. This means one who is a strict follower of all religious principles. Dharma. I was actually very nervous, and I was practically shaking because I was afraid I would do something wrong in front of Srila Prabhupada. I was so nervous practically I couldn't even hear properly. But I was very happy to have been accepted by Srila Prabhupada. I knew, of course, there was no question of ever leaving the movement now. I never wanted to leave anyway, but now this was official. Even if I had considered it before, now there was no question of it. So Prabhupada's having this conversation with this guy, and the guy's, the interviewer's, I guess, not even paying attention really. So he says to the guy, he's like, hey, if you got to go to if you're sick, do you go to your friend or do you go to your doctor? And the guy's like, I go to my friend. And Prabhupada's like, no, you're not paying attention. Let me try this again. You either go to, you're going to go to your physician because your physician knows. That's why you go to a spiritual master to learn about, religion. You don't go to your buddy or someone not trained. You go to somebody who's trained in that and has a strong understanding of it. So they left and it's now very late at night and Prabhupada goes up to his room, but there's still these 5 devotees who were there to take initiation under Prabhupada. But the day went by and there was no initiation and he was holding on to their beads still. And these guys had come from, it looks like a good distance, right, from Louisiana and a couple, a guy from Gainesville from Florida and they were wondering if their ceremony was going to happen. So Arvind goes and asks Prabhupada what's going to happen. And Prabhupada says, you know what, we'll do it right now. We're going to hold initiation right now. And all right, upstairs, girls. There's a slumber party. There's a sleepover at my house tonight. So there's
nice.
I have an extra one here that I normally don't have, who was the loud one you just heard. But sorry. So Prabhupada, Arvind goes and asks Prabhupada, hey, when are we going to do this? These guys are waiting downstairs. And Prabhupada says, you know what, come on up. We're going to do the initiation right now in our room. And they go up and Prabhupada's there and he's wearing essentially a loincloth, it sounds like, right? He's got no shirt on. He's just sitting on his bed. And they said he's glowing. He looked like he was glowing as he sat there. And he hands, he's chanting on the beads of the eligible candidates for initiation, and he starts with Gary, and he tells Gary, your name's Dharmadasa now, and that's the one who is a strict follower of all religious principles. And then Dharma talks about how nervous he was when he was when he was in front of Prabhupada. He was afraid he would somehow screw up, and he was so nervous he couldn't even grasp what was going on. He couldn't hear what was going on. But Prabhupada accepted him, and he knew then that he was never going to leave Krishna consciousness. He not that he had wanted to, but he said, "No, I can't. Like I'm in for good now." So,
Vijayan Prabhu.
Then there was Joseph from New Orleans. What is his name? Prabhupada asked Aravinda. Aravinda read from a sheet, Bhagavata Dasa. Prabhupada smiled and said, oh, Bhagavata Dasa, very good. There are 2 things. There is the book Bhagavata, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and the person Bhagavata, who follows perfectly those teachings. He is living manifestation of the book Bhagavata, and you are Bhagavata Dasa. That means you are the servant of the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata. Bhagavata. I always wanted a name that meant I was a servant of the Guru. So when I heard this, I was very happy. Prabhupada started to hand me my beads, but then he pulled them back and asked, and what are the 4 regulative principles? So I told him, and he said, very good. Then he went to hand me my beads again, but again he pulled them back. He asked, "How many rounds do you chant?" I was very proud because I had been chanting 20 rounds a day and for about 5 months. So I sat up real straight and said, "You are supposed to chant 16 rounds a day, Srila Prabhupada, but I chant 20. Srila Prabhupada just turned away from me and said, "That's all right." It was like he was saying, "Don't get puffed up." Then he turned to me and said, "Here are your beads." Handing Dev his beads, Prabhupada said, "Your name is Amarendra. That means the best of immortals." He named Adrin, Gayatri Dasi, and Sam Suvrata. When Suvrata stood and Prabhupada noticed he was not wearing neck beads, he withheld the chanting bits and said, "You have no neck beads? Where are your neck beads?" Prabhupada turned to Bhagavad Dasa. "You also have no neck beads." Bhagavata thought Prabhupada was going to take his chanting beads back, so he hid them against his stomach. And Prabhupada turned to the senior devotee in the room, criticizing, "What's the matter with you?" He said sternly, "You are leaders and you don't know these things. Don't you know that you must put neck beads in giving initiation?" So here the narration continues with the initiating the other devotees. So one person like Joseph and from Orleans, and Prabhupada gave him a name Bhagavata Dasa, and he mentioned the meaning for this name. He said like there are two things. There is a book Bhagavata, like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and the person Bhagavata who follows perfectly those teachings. So he's given explanation that Bhagavata Dasa means like he's the servant of the book Bhagavata and a person Bhagavata. So Bhagavata here says like he was looking for a name that he was the servant of the Guru, and when he heard this, he was like very happy. And before giving the beats, Prabhupada questioned him like, "What are the four regulative principles?" And Bhagavatam given the answer, and Prabhupada replied, "It's very good." And also Prabhupada, before giving the beats, he asked like how many rounds he need to chant. And like Bhagavata was very confident that because he was already chanting like 20 rounds for the past 5 months. So he was mentioning that he's supposed to chant 16 rounds a day, but I am already chanting 20. So then Prabhupada handed over the beads to him. Then while giving the beads to the next devotee for Dev, and he mentioned his name as Amarendra, meaning the best of the immortals. And for the other devotees, he gave the name Gayatri Desi and Suvrata. And for Suvrata, Prabhupada noticed that he was not wearing neck beads, and he questioned him like why he did not have neck beads. And also he saw that Bhagavata also did not have neck beads, so he started criticizing the senior devotee that they should take care of having. They should ensure that the people who are coming for initiation should have the neck beads with them.
Okay, Prasanthi.
The senior devotees were frightened by Prabhupada's anger. "We are sorry, Prabhupada," someone said. "Tomorrow, for the fire yajna, they will have neck beads." "Yes," Prabhupada said. "You cannot do the fire yajna without neck beads. You must have neck beads." Although it was midnight, Prabhupada asked if the devotees had any questions. Bhagavata Dasa raised his hand. "How is it that we are on a transcendental platform, but sometimes we are affected by the three modes of nature?" "It is just like you are on a boat," Prabhupada replied. "If you are on a boat, then I cannot say you are not on a boat. Is it not? So you are on a transcendental boat. Therefore, you are on the transcendental platform. You cannot say that you are not. But the waves are coming and they are rocking the boat." Prabhupada gestured with his hands like a boat rocking. "So the waves of the material nature are coming," he continued, "and they are rocking the boat. But when you become an expert boatsman, then even in the greatest storm, you can stay steady and steer the boat, and it will not rock." "Well, how does one become an expert boatsman?" Bhagavata asked. "You become expert," Prabhupada replied, "by becoming enthusiastic, sincere, confident, determined, and patient. Seeing Bhagavata's anxious face, Prabhupada added, "And you must be patient. Everything will come in due course." Sitting informally on the bed in his abbreviated dhoti, Prabhupada had answered Bhagavata's questions in such a way as to fully satisfy all the devotees. The devotees were already satisfied just to be with Prabhupada, but by his answers to their questions, not only they, n- not only they, but all the devotees could take encouragement and be satisfied. They would tell the others what he had said, and everyone would cherish these instructions of Srila Prabhupada. The senior devotees were frightened by Prabhupada's anger, and they said sorry to Prabhupada, and they said they will make sure all the disciples will have neck beads for yajna. And Prabhupada said it is very important to have neck beads for fire yajna. And Prabhupada asked if anyone has any questions. Bhagavata Dasa raised his hand, asking how is that we are on the transcendental platforms, but again affected by the modes of material nature. Then Prabhupada said, it is just like you are on a boat. Even though you are on a transcendental boat, the waves keep coming. So they are the waves from the material nature. And who is when one becomes an expert boatsman, even in the greatest storm, it would the boat would be steady, and it will not rock. And Bhagavata asked again how to become an expert boatsman. And Prabhupada replies by saying one should be enthusiastic, sincere, confident, determined, and patient. Because Bhagavata is looking very anxious, he said, "You must be patient, then everything will come along and by time." And everybody was satisfied with the answers of Prabhupada. They are very happy to be in his presence, and they will also share the instructions of Prabhupada with other devotees.
Nipa, please.
Amarendra also had a question. Amarendra was intense and impassioned, and so was his inquiry. Before becoming a devotee, he had been a leader of campus radicals. Now he wanted to bring that same intensity to bear in spreading Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, Amarendra asked, how can we make them take to this Krishna consciousness? What can we say when we go to preach to people? What can we say that will make them take it? His voice was heavy and forceful, demanding action. You simply ask them to please chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada replied. Whether they take or not, that is their business. That is between them and Krishna. But you have done your business. You have done your duty for Krishna by simply asking them, please chant Hare Krishna. How do we take our minds away from Maya and bring them to Krishna? Radha Vallabha asked. You must drag the mind, Prabhupada said. You must drag the mind back to the sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And again he repeated, you must drag the mind back to the sound vibration. All right. Prabhupada looked around. You are satisfied now? The devotees responded, yes, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Then they all left. It had been the greatest day and night of their lives. They all agreed and they would never forget it. While Prabhupada rode to the Jacksonville airport in a car with a few disciples, the other devotees followed in their van, bringing the Vyasana from the temple for Prabhupada to use at the airport. Srila Prabhupada closed his eyes and rested as he rode, and the devotees in the back seat of the car ate the remnants of his prasadam. Uh, uh, Hirata Hridayananda. It was my idea to bring Prabhupada's Vyasana to the airport. I was thinking, how can my spiritual master sit? Oh, we are not summarizing.
There was a little lag. I mean, because you're reading, you can do that. Finish that.
How can my spiritual master sit in the same seats that karmis sit on? It's just impossible. How could Prabhupada put his lotus body? How could he sit on the same seats as the karmis? I was very agitated by that. Amarendra had a had built the Vyasana, and he used to build everything like a tank. The Vyasana must have weighed several hundred pounds. It took 4 or 5 devotees to carry it.
This is called Vyasa Asana. Vyasa Asana.
Vyasa Asana. The Vyasa Asana must have weighed several hundred pounds. So here it says, Prabhupada, I think little Amarindra is asking the question, and he was intense and impatient. So before becoming a devotee, he was a leader of campus radicals, and now, uh, yeah, and now he wanted to bring the same intensity in the Krishna consciousness. So he asked Prabhupada how to do it, how to make them do this Krishna consciousness, and what to say, and how do we do it. And his voice was heavy and forceful, demanding action. So Prabhupada said, you simply ask them to chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada replied, whether they take it or not, it's their business. It's between them and Krishna. All you have to, it's your business is done. Your duty is done for Krishna by asking them to chant Hare Krishna mantra. How do we take our minds? This is what is asked by Radha Vallabha, saying, how do we take our minds away from Maya and bring them to Krishna? So Prabhupada said, you must drag your mind. And Prabhupada repeated, saying, you must drag the mind back to the sound vibration of Hare Krishna mantra. And he repeated the same thing. And he said, Prabhupada then asked, is it okay? All right, are you satisfied now? So devotees replied, yes. And he said, Prabhupada replied, thank you very much. And everyone left. It was the greatest day and night of their lives. And they all agreed. And that could be never forgotten. When Prabhupada rode to Jacksonville airport in the car with few disciples, the devotees were in the van bringing their Vyas asana from the temple for Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada closed his eyes and rested as he rode, and devotees in the back seat ate the remnants of the prasadam. Hridayananda was saying that it was his idea to bring Prabhupada's Vyasasana to the airport, and then he was thinking, how can his spiritual masters sit in the same seats as the other karmis? And it just seemed impossible for him. And he kept repeating, thinking that how Prabhupada put his lotus body, how could he sit like this with other karmis? He was very agitated, and Amarendra had built the Vyasasana, and he used to build everything like a tank. And the Vyasasana must have been weighed like 700 pounds, and it took 4 or 5 devotees to carry it.
Isn't it such a wonderful? So much of awe and reverence for spiritual master. They were carrying Vyasas to airports to have Prabhupada seat. And that's very amazing. I'm so happy to have everyone, and thank you so much. We will continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna. I have a question, I have a point for everyone. On Tuesday, we'll have a reading of Krishna book. Everybody can take off from, that's the best day to take off. Reading of Krishna book online from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. So every devotee can take, you can join as many hours you can join, or you can log in just here, while if you're doing something, you can hear. But it's a great opportunity to hear as much as we can. But one thing I would say that